Hello everybody, welcome to Words of Mormon. If you noticed, I actually have changed my name here on TikTok. I don't know how permanent it is. I am kind of, as I've talked about last week, kind of sort of wrapping up on my Mormon story. I have a couple more weeks to go. I'll talk about some more things. I don't want to completely abandon this platform like this. I thought about possibly just creating like a new TikTok channel to do my other creative endeavors, my witchy stuff or whatever, do that stuff there instead, and leave this one just for Mormon stuff, where I would post less regularly once I'm finished with my Mormon story. But the thing is like, I feel like it's all wrapped up. I feel like I would like to have a channel that is all me, like all of me, not just a part of me, not just a portion. And so I would really like to keep it together here. And I'm sure that as I go, even if the content is a little bit more not ex-LDS, not ex-Mormon, and the content's a little bit more artistic or aesthetic or something, then I can still kind of hop on and be like, look, this happened in the church, or I had this experience or something, and have it still be relevant because I've built this foundation on my experiences as an ex-Mormon. And so I am going to keep it around. I probably will change the name. I don't know. It's called the Poppy Cauldron. The reason it's called the Poppy Cauldron is because I have made soap for 15 years or so now. I did have a break when I've had babies, because the lies and things that I use, not lies like telling lies, but like lye that you use to make soap. The fumes are not safe while you're pregnant. They're not safe anytime. Like, you don't want to breathe that in, but like, they're not safe. And then like on top of that, like I get really bad sickness, morning sickness and stuff like that, which isn't morning sickness. It lasts all day. So I would take breaks and things. So, but I've been making soap for about 15 years. The soap that I make right now is, it's witchy, and they're spells and potions and things. So you use them, and there's like meditations and things that I suggest when using them. However, with that said, what I was talking about is the name. Poppy Cauldron is the name of the little business that I had, or what I used when I sold on Etsy. And, so I like it. It's a little bit witchy. It's a little bit cottagecore. It's kind of cute. I don't know. I'm trying to find my niche. I'm trying to find, or niche, or however you say that. I'm trying to find where I fit in here. Anyway, so if you've noticed that my name has changed, I'm sorry for any confusion. It's another transition. It's another part of all of this. So anyway, those of you who are here for my Mormon story today, I'll get started right away. I ended last week where I had just been asked to be in the Relief Society with my ward. I had been, it's my lemon, my clementine. I had been outspoken. I was the girl who rocked the boat. I had been kind of doubling down and trying to get, like, I was feeling, and I didn't think about this at the time. I didn't acknowledge it at the time. I was trying to feel a part of the community. I was trying to do what I had control over in my own life, to feel as though I was involved and involved and included, and, being genuine within the LDS community that I belonged to, or was trying to belong to. And so I had gone, and this was 2023. I had gone to, no, this was 2022. I'm sorry. I had gone to the Relief Society activity that was like a reporting on ministering, and I had asked them to give me some sisters, and I wanted to start serving because I had asked to be released from ministering during COVID because it was too overwhelming for me. I had set a boundary. I had felt guilty about that boundary. I didn't need to feel guilty about that boundary, but I had. And therefore, like at this time, I was like, if I want to feel the Spirit, if I want to have blessings, if I want to see those blessings in my life, and I want my kids to be blessed, and if I want, like all of these things for me and my family, then I need to be doing the work that God wants me to do. And so I had gone in there and I had asked them for, ministering sisters for me to minister to and to get more involved again. And like I said last week, I do not do this specifically to call out or to say negative things about the women that I served with. I think all of the women that I served with are, as individuals, just the best kind of people. They are wonderful, wonderful people. They are loving and serving and kind and generous and gentle and strong too. However, I struggled with the whole thing because overall, regardless of their individuality and the way that they were on an individual basis, they were very, very orthodox women and very much products of the institution as a whole. And so I struggled with that because even though they were good people, they really adhered to these rules and these thought processes that I felt were strict, unfair, and prejudiced. And as women, they actually perpetuated the patriarchy, which I was very disturbed by. Everything during this time frame just really became more and more difficult for me. I thought when I jumped into the calling of being the second counselor in the Relief Society, I thought for sure this is going to be just spiritual experience after spiritual experience. I'm going to be with women all the time who are overcoming obstacles. I'm going to be a part of that. I'm going to be a part of blessing them. I'm going to be a part of an institution that is going to help these women, and I'm going to gain a testimony of the blessings and the miracles that can happen through that. And that is literally what I expected. I expected that to happen to me. And I was really, really looking forward to the ability to serve. I had been told my whole life that when you serve other people and you look outside yourself, you are going to learn so much love, and you're going to see miracles and blessings and everything as well. I'd been taught that. Of course, the church doesn't really believe that. Like, the church does not. We don't need to go into this, I guess. It's not applicable to this topic. I just think that overall, and the church's stance on politics, and they try to act like they stay neutral, but they really don't. The way that they teach self-reliance and the way that they, like the prophet, President Benson, he really, really drilled it into Mormons' heads that they can't be anything except for a Republican, and that everything else was bad. And they still, to this day, adhere to that like it's glue, like fly tape. And so even service is extremely, even service in the church is extremely transactional, not just with God, like blessings in the church are very transactional. You do this, you'll get a blessing. It's a payment in the form of service or in the form of tithing or the form of, any various thing. And you do this thing and you will receive blessings. And service is kind of the same thing. It's very transactional. You can only receive service if you are doing other things that are required of you. So there's like a payment, there's an owed something. Anyway, I don't want to get too far off track because I want to talk about my Mormon story, not necessarily that specific moral issue that I have with the church today, because I do. I again, and a lot of you have heard me say this, I didn't leave the church because I didn't think it was true. I don't anymore. I've done my research at this point, but when I left the church, it wasn't because I didn't think it was true. I left the church because I didn't feel that it was good and moral anymore. So I just want to talk about some of my experiences as a Relief Society presidency member. Now, 100% other people are going to have other experiences where you've served in a presidency and they were wonderful, nuanced, accepting kind of people who, and you're going to say, well, that wasn't my experience. Like, it's not about you. This is my experience. And also, just because you had a fantastic experience, and not all of my experiences were horrible either, just because you had a fantastic experience doesn't mean that you're the majority either. I hear stories very similar to mine all the time. And I know that people who have very positive experiences also hear stories just like theirs all the time. This isn't about comparing who's right, who's wrong, or statistics. This is my experience, and it's the kind of thing that, regardless of whether or not it's anecdotal, because obviously it is, like, our experiences are just, there are experiences. And I'm trying to get the glare off my glasses. I'm facing my window instead of away from my window because then I get backlit and everything. But my glasses, it's a fact of life. I have glasses. They reflect. It just is what it is. They are moons. Anyway, moving on. So yeah, so I am not trying by any means to be like anybody else's experience isn't true or isn't real or valid. This is my experience. And if you didn't have the same, fantastic for you. These are things that I struggled with. So some examples of what I'm talking about with being on the inside, being kind of in a leadership position. I was not the president. I was the second counselor. A second counselor is in the Relief Society is over family history and is over the activities committee. So I was very, very heavily involved in creating the activities, the monthly activities, the holiday activities, those kinds of things. And helping, like, I worked with the family historian. I didn't really do that. It was, my plate was very, very full as a Relief Society president with just the stuff with our ward. I didn't do a lot with the temple. I already had very negative feelings about the temple, so I kind of avoided that anyway. But also, like, I was supposed to be working with I think it was the like ward missionaries, which is like a couple that are they're over the missionaries. They help with the missionary work in the ward. And I was supposed to work with them about organizing like monthly ward temple trips and activities. And even through 2022, COVID was still, like, their effects with that were still kind of in effect, where you had to make appointments, and it wasn't just like show up at the temple at this time, guys. We also had a lot of people in the ward who worked nights, or the husbands were out of town a lot, and so we would have women who were alone with their kids a lot, and it wasn't really an option for them to just go to the temple. They would have to find babysitters and rides, and we also didn't have a temple in Tooele at the time. We do now. It was being built, but it wasn't done yet, and so we would have to drive out someplace and stuff. So there were a lot of conflicts. We tried having temple activity, like temple trips in the middle of the day, or we tried being like, okay, everybody just go when you can, make an appointment and then report it, because like apparently they were supposed to report it. Anyway, that's not where I spent all of my time. That's not where I spent a lot of my time. The majority of my time was spent on activities. But also we met as a presidency every single Sunday, and did a lot of visitations. So shortly after I got in, and just to like insert here and let you know, I have a ton of anxiety. I don't think it really stems from scrupulosity. Scrupulosity is when you, specifically in high demand religions, but it can be in other areas too, but it's like a psychological thing where you feel you have to be perfect. It's a perfectionism kind of a thing. Like, you know, think of somebody who has to have like perfectly clean, like obsessive compulsively, like clean area, sterile, wash their hands a billion times a day. Like scrupulosity is the kind of thing where you just get very like you obey the rules of the church, like exactly. You pray and you read scriptures, and if you don't do it enough, then you like basically punish yourself, like emotionally, or you might withhold things that bring you joy from yourself because you aren't you know, you don't feel you deserve them, and you feel extreme guilt and stuff like that. My anxiety, I don't feel guilt to the degree, I have anxiety, and I have, you know, various things that contribute to that. It's not just one thing, and I don't think that it comes from scrupulosity. But I did really struggle with autonomy in the church. Autonomy is like one of the biggest things for me that was such a huge struggle. I never felt like I was my own person. I never felt like I was separate from anything. I was always like kind of enmeshed as just a part of this, a part of it. And not to say that it's a bad thing to feel like you are a part of something bigger or a part of a group, you know, if it's something that fulfills you, but the church didn't fulfill me. And so I just always felt like I was just going along. It felt like I was like a perpetual child. I needed permission. I needed instructions, like with my phone, and people would call me out on it, you know, being on my phone, like during church or something like that. Like I always like made excuses, you know, like I'm on my phone because, you know, like I need to keep my hands busy or else I don't really focus, which is entirely true. But, you know, I've talked about this lots of times. It was clearly a very prevalent part of my interaction where I, as an adult, would be called out on like my phone usage or the amount of attention that I was paying. Never mind that like this is where I was supposed to be and I was there. So like, what's your problem? You know? Like I would feel though, like if I didn't go to church for 1 week, or if we had sickness, you know, and I didn't, like I never skipped. I remember with Clementine, when I was pregnant with her, with my other 5 kids, I had morning sickness, but it went away after, you know, about the 18th week, and then I was totally fine. But with Clementine, she had a different dad, and that probably had something to do with the genetics of all of it. But like I was super sick the entire time. I was older. I was 32, I think, when I had her, when I was pregnant with her. And I was very sick like the whole time, but I never ever skipped because I taught classes, and I had things that were happening that I had to be at church for and I was responsible for. And instead of setting a boundary because I was taking care of myself, I hadn't learned that yet. I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm not contagious. Like I'm not throwing up because I have a stomach flu. I'm over here dry heaving because I am growing a baby and I just need to power through, which is such an unhealthy thought process, you know. Like it was absolutely legitimate for me to be like, look, take the kids to church, Ches. I am sick and I'm going to use this time to rest and rejuvenate. But I didn't use it that way. So, you know, like I would, if I didn't go 1 week, I felt like I wasn't magnifying my calling. If I didn't teach what they wanted, I would somehow be in trouble. You know, like I always had this fear of I'm going to be in trouble hanging over my head. Somebody is going to notice and I'm going to get a talking to. I'm going to get a lecture. I'm going to have a consequence. And not from God. Like I wasn't afraid of God. I was afraid of people around me, which is ludicrous because like all of it is volunteer. None of them have any kind of actual power over you. They don't have any kind of, you know, anything. But like, I don't know, they couldn't sue me. Like, I don't know, what were they going to do? telling their kid that it was okay to be who they are and they don't need to hide that they're LGBTQ. Like, I could get in trouble with that for that at church. But like, really, like looking back on that, I was like, what was I afraid of? Like, what are they going to do? Be like, you can't have that opinion? And I'd be like, yes, I can. Like, what are they going to do? But yeah, like if I lost my recommend, would I even be sad about it? Like, if they took away my recommend because I wasn't doing what they wanted me to do, would I even be sad? No, because I didn't even want to go to the temple. Like, my sealing to my family was very important to me. I love my family. I really, really resent the implications and even straight up comments that I get when people don't like that I've left the church. And they say that about it, like, well, you're not thinking of your kids, or you are damning your children, you're taking your family with you to, to hell, or whatever they say to me. I resent that because I adore my family. I love my family. I do feel like I've broken some generational trauma with my kids. I've worked really hard to be a very good mom. And so I resent that when people say those kinds of things to me, because my family is the most important thing to me, and my sealing to my family did mean a lot to me, but at what cost? When I had to be doing all these other things that I didn't feel were morally correct. I had to have opinions that I didn't feel were morally correct. I had to, anyway. I got into our Relief Society. We're already 20 minutes in and I'm only a quarter way through the page. I am ad-libbing so much. We may end earlier than where I planned to today. Sorry. It is what it is. Whatever. We're talking about it, right? We're processing. Anyway, I got into Relief Society, and I really should have been like, I should have just been like, look, I'm just going to be me. And so I should have just gone in there and felt like, I'm just going to be me. Like, I got called for a reason. I literally, when the Relief Society president, the bishop was like, will you take, and I was like, yeah, like I would like to. But then I talked to the Relief Society president. I was like, do you know me? Are you sure? Because I rock the boat. That I have opinions. And she's like, I feel like you are the person for the job. And she told me that. And so I should have gone in there feeling like, this is why I'm here. And I did to a degree, but also at that same time, I felt like I needed to be better. I needed to be better, like, in quotations. I needed to be a better person. I needed to be more orthodox. I needed to follow the rules better. I needed to be an example. And so, I did very much struggle with that idea, coupled with what I tried to make like a balance. I tried to make it a balance where I was speaking up when I felt something wasn't right, but also I would feel terrible about it because I was, I just basically felt like I knew what the rules were. I knew what the church's stance was on things. And I started to feel really self-conscious about having different feelings. And when I would speak up about it, then I would feel like I was causing contention. And then, of course, contention is of the devil, right? So when I felt something wasn't right, and I would have that conflicting feeling, well, should I speak up about it? Maybe I should just be on the same page. Maybe I should just join, the crowd, basically. And then I would feel really bad about that because I was complicit in perpetuating things that I didn't believe in. And it was harder, as a presidency member, to pick the things that I believed and just ignore the things that I didn't, because I was front and center. I was the one making announcements every time or every Sunday in Relief Society. I was the one, like, people would literally come to me and be like, Bray, I'm struggling with this thing. And I would be like, me too. But like, I didn't feel like I could do that. I didn't feel like I could be upfront about it. So first thing, shortly after I got in, the Relief Society president vented to us about a family that had reached out for a food order. And I didn't know who the family was. She didn't talk about who the family was, but she was really upset about it because when she called to make an appointment to stop by and get them their food order, they weren't available. when she was, because they were going to a drag show. And she said that she had to hand it over to the priesthood because she just couldn't support that. And honestly, like, there are so many questions here. Like, what exactly couldn't she support? Like, was it because they were going to a drag show because of the LGBTQIA implications? Did she feel like maybe they were spending money on something that they shouldn't spend money on since they needed food? Would she feel the same way if, like, the family was going to, like, I don't know, Disney on Ice or to see a Forgotten Carols? Would her feelings be different? Neither is a valid reason, in my opinion. Like, having been, I've been poor. So, like, it doesn't, like, whatever her concerns were, they weren't valid because, we don't know what the context is of this, Were they going to the show because they were given tickets or they won tickets? Maybe they're going to the show because they have somebody in the show that they love and who they are supporting in the show. Maybe they were given them as a gift. I don't know. Like, maybe they bought the tickets before they fell upon this hardship. Sometimes you buy tickets for shows months ahead of time, Like, I don't know. But I was really super saddened by it because I feel like if people need food, they need food. It's food. It's stuff you eat. The church storehouse, the bishop's storehouse, does not have things that you can take and then turn around and resell. It's not going to be, and if you're turning around and you're reselling it, the people who are going to be buying it are going to be buying food. We're not talking about, like, big ticket appliances here or even nice clothes. We're talking about spaghetti, So especially, if there's a child in the home that needed basic needs covered, like, a food order is a very specific set of items that they can get. It does not even cover, like, even all the basic needs. There's no medicine there. You can't get, like, baby Tylenol or ibuprofen. You can't get, you can't get medicines like that, or like Pepto-Bismol or anything, antacids. You can't get any of those things. It's food. It's literally just food, and very, very limited, very specific kinds of food. So, I just never liked the idea that poor people need to look and act poor and that they need to forego anything that brings them joy or helps them ease the heavy mental and emotional toll of having, not enough, and that it should mean that they don't get to go to or have anything that costs real money. Like, there's also a consistent theme about this where she would always say things like, well, they're only interested when they want something from us, or, they're only investigating. But I think that they don't really want to join. They just want us to give them food. And it was really frustrating. And because, like, first of all, it's totally judging people based on nothing, like knowing nothing about them or their situation. But also, like, in Tooele, we have 3 other churches within, like, with various denominations within, like, a 3-mile radius, like, maybe not even that, maybe like a 1-mile radius. We have 3 different congregations, and they, all of them have regular days of the week where they set up their congregations, volunteer to serve, and they just give food and meals and supplies to people who just show up in need. Like, there's no requirements, no paperwork to fill out. You don't have to declare your earnings. You don't have to have somebody from, their leadership come in and look at your spending habits and tell you that you have to cut this out. They don't tell you have to come and clean their church. They don't have, you don't have to be members of their congregation. All these things, and these things aren't $1 billion churches. Our church is $1 billion church. Billions, hundreds of billions, like not even 100 billion, but multiple hundreds of billions of dollars. And we nitpick the people who need help. But these other churches, they just are like, here, these are just little local churches. And they get the donations from the community who know exactly where their donations are going and what they're doing. And they just give it to people in their immediate community without strings attached. Like, literally, Elon Musk could drive up to one of these things and take food he needed or wanted and not be questioned. But in order to get food from the LDS church, you have to have someone who isn't even a professional. They'd come in, they're in ward leadership. They could be a plumber. They could be a kindergarten teacher, because the Relief Society typically does it, They could be, like, I don't know. They could be, but they're not professionally trained, and they can come in and they can make you declare all your earnings and show where you spend it, and they can be like, you need to turn off your cell phone bill. Never mind that doesn't help you get a job, just according to their own opinion. So we did do, when I was in the Relief Society at the end of 2023, because I left in 2024. So the end of 2023, right before Christmas, our stake decided that they wanted to contribute to the food pantry that's here in Tooele. All of the congregations in the area do it, and the other churches as well. And our church will have it go ward by ward. So the stake will organize that, and they'll be like, okay, this month it's such and such word, the first word, and this month it's the second word, and the next month it's the whatever. Anyway, we're the 17th ward, and there's not 17 stakes. It's because they combined 17 wards. It's because they combined 2 wards, the 1st and the 7th, at some point before I even moved here. And so instead of making it like, the 3rd ward or something like that, they just combined the 1 and the 7. They made it the 17th. So it sounds like there are a lot more people than there are, but there's not. I don't know how many wards there are in our stake based on the number of people who attend stake conference and how many people attended my ward. I would probably venture to say maybe 4, but I don't know. I don't know for sure off the top of my head. So anyway, there was a situation near the end of 2023 where the stake decided that our ward was going to be the ward that was responsible for filling the pantry. We needed to create 100 lunches for homeless people or people in need. And there was like a specific list of things that you can bring. They needed to be able to have a main meal and like a side, like chips or something, or fruit, and then a fruit cup, and snacks and things like granola bars and things like that. And we had to fill them up and everything. So we did that, but they told us a week. We had 1 week, which means we had 1 day at church that we could talk to people. I had access to our social media. We had a Facebook group, so I posted there and everything, but really we only had 1 week to say, we need people to sign up for this. And hands down, people were so generous. They absolutely came out of the woodwork and brought things, and we filled that up. We also did it again in February of 2024. We were told that it was our ward's turn again, and we would need to do this, and they did it. They did it. They got it together. People showed up. In fact, we did an activity where we packaged them. The men came in, the elders quorum came in as well, and we packed it up. I think it took us 10 minutes to pack 100 lunches. So I have to give credit where it is due. Again, individually, all these people are good, kind, generous people. It's more the institution. So nobody that I'm talking about specifically, I feel like any of the flaws that they have are the things that I had struggled with on an individual basis with them is a result of the institution, if that makes sense. So to further illustrate all of this, I was once at a Relief Society training in July of 2023. So this was probably 6 months into it. I got put in, I guess a little bit more than that, 9 months. Yeah, because I got put in October 2022. So this was 9 months later, but there was a training, and I swear we did trainings once a month. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was so exhausting, guys. We had so many trainings. Anyway, but I was at this training in 2023, and I've told this story before, so it may sound familiar, maybe repetitive to you, but it is what it is. It's part of the story. We were talking about the self-help sections of LDS.org. which are like all of these things that are supposed to be like training materials about how you can overcome certain things. There's stuff in there for, single parents, divorce, adoption, teen pregnancy, LGBTQ and stuff. And it's all very affirming to the church's stances. So there's very little nuance in any of that. It's always like, we'll love them, but we're going to make sure that they know what they did wrong. We're not going to condone these behaviors, but also love them, but make sure that they know they're wrong. Like everything, like it's all like that. We had to study this stuff, and I hated it because I felt like it was so, like, I just hated it. And I couldn't articulate that. I couldn't articulate why or what, like, I mean, I knew why I hated it. I just couldn't, I wasn't supposed to hate it. I was supposed to be like, yes, this makes perfect sense from a loving God. And I was like, here I am, a parent, an imperfect parent, and I love my kids way more than this. There's no way I would use this to help take care of one of my family members or even a neighbor or an acquaintance. Like, I would never treat somebody this way. Anyway, again, we're 36 minutes in. I'm only on the second page. I usually have 12 pages that I get through in an hour. I'm sorry. This is very, very new to me. A lot of the previous stuff that I've talked about has been, my childhood 40 years ago. Oh, my college experience 25 years ago. Like, this is very, very new. Very, very, not new, but very recent and still on the surface. So I remember a lot of these details. Anyway, so we were doing this training, and, the whole point was that we were supposed to take work off of the plate of the bishops of our stake, because the focus for the bishops had gone from being the head of the ward, which he still was, but also that they wanted him to focus on the youth, which don't get me started right now on my opinions about that, because I have them, of course, but also, I mean, like, okay, like, no, I can't go into it. I can't go on to another tangent. I will just, but bishops should not be, untrained bishops should not be spending insane amounts of time with the youth. They just should not. Anyway, so there were a few skits that were done, and one of the skits was about a woman who needed food because she didn't have enough money. And I don't really remember the skit exactly, like all the details of the skit, but a little later we were in line to get our dessert, and a lady because we had refreshments, you always have refreshments. And of course we prayed that they would nourish and strengthen our bodies, because I guess it was fruity. There were some strawberries involved. So maybe there was, a little bit of that. Anyway, we were in line to get our dessert, and this was this lady from a different ward Relief Society presidency. And so she was standing there in line with me, and I was wearing a summery dress. It was July, it was hot. And, it didn't go below my knees. Like, it went to my knee, covered where my garments would have been if I were wearing them. I wasn't, but, and I was wearing that dress, and I have three tattoos, and all three of them were visible. I have my butterfly, I have my bee, and then I have, I don't know. I think last time I almost flashed and I've got this one on my leg. So I have three, and I love my tattoos, and they were all visible and everything. But she was talking, and I'm looking at her kind of just going like, I'm sure, just like, like this, like, are you kidding? Are you serious? Like, just, I'm sure that my face, they say that, when I shut my mouth, the subtitles come out, which is like the look on my face. Like, I have to correct my face often because I'm expressive, and I'm not good at hiding that. But she was going on and talking about, like, talking to me like I should agree. Like she wasn't asking any opinions. She was just being like, going on like, we're all on the same page. We all agree on this, right? And she kept talking about this in the line where she was saying she sometimes goes into people's houses to do the food orders, and she sees that they have tattoos up and down their arms. And it always bothers her, because if they can spend money on tattoos, then they should spend it on food instead. And I listened to her talk about this, and I just said, they don't cost money after they're done, right? Like, if that person gets a tattoo and 5 years ago, they got that tattoo, they lost their job 3 months ago, that tattoo doesn't cost them money anymore. Like, if they got their tattoo with money when they had it, and they had that money and it was something they could spend, like, it's not costing money out of their pocket that they should be spending on food. It isn't actively taking away from their finances when they lose their job 5 years later. And she went on to say that if they didn't get that tattoo, then they could have saved that much money. And it isn't something that they need. And I said, well, like a couple $100, but all of my tattoos, all 4 of them, they cost between $300 and $500, which I understand is a lot of money. My first one, my company that I work for, paid for it because it was on my bucket list, and I had been there for 9 years, and that was like a milestone. And so they gave me money to do something on my bucket list with, and so I didn't pay for that out of pocket. The other ones I saved for a long time in order to be able to get. Like, I had a goal in mind, and I saved some money over time. I didn't just say get a paycheck and be like, I'm not going to buy food for my family, I'm going to get a tattoo instead. Like, I saved it, and then when I had enough money saved, I was not struggling, and I got tattoos. Anyway, so she said, I just explained that most tattoos are less money than a car payment per month, and especially if they're small. And like, they wouldn't even really do a full grocery shopping trip if it's a small one. I said, if you went to Disneyland and you spent all this money on Disneyland, and then 5 years later you lose your job, like, are you going to say, well, I shouldn't have gone on that trip to Disneyland? Because that's not needed. And she just rolled her eyes at me, and she turned around, got her dessert, and went and sat somewhere else. But literally, like, these people who have those opinions, they go into homes, they're not trained, they're very, very biased, they're very, very opinionated, and they're told to have those opinions by the church. And then they go into these homes and they look over the finances of people in that household, and they can decide, no, you don't need food because you can just stop paying Netflix $15 a month, or you can buy food with that. Like, that isn't going to buy a meal for a family. Like, I grocery shop. I know how much it costs. That's not going to buy food for a family, to cancel your Netflix bill. Or they give you less food because they think that you need to, your extended family should help with that. Or you can cancel your phone. I've talked about that before. Like, that's phones these days, cell phones these days. Almost nobody has a landline. Landlines are not cheap. They're really not cheap, especially if you have an inexpensive or older model of a phone. I have an Apple, and it is not an expensive one. Like, yeah, it costs a little bit, but it doesn't cost me anything now besides the plan. I wear mine out. I use my phones until they just don't work anymore, and if I lost my phone, I wouldn't have, and I was looking for a job, I would not have, like, that would really damage my ability to be able to get a job. You have to have a phone and a phone number, and you have to have an email, and you have to have a way to access it, So there were lots of times when a woman would call the I have it in my notes that as RS, so sorry, Relief Society, and asked to have meals brought in because she had surgery or she had a baby or something. And the discussion was always like, oh, we'll take 3 meals in or so, but then she has a husband who can do it. She has teenage kids who can learn to cook and clean. Extended family needs to help too. Like, everyone in the ward spends so much time serving. Like, legit, every single person in the ward, they have callings, they teach our children, they provide activities, they go to camp with our young women and our young men. Like, all of these women, especially women, like, I know the bishop is busy, but women run the church. We run the country. We run everything, and the men take credit for it. Let's be honest, okay? Women run everything. They run this whole community. So why is it even a concern? Why can't we just provide a couple of weeks worth of meals? I don't get that. If they want them, You know, like women, a lot of women, like they, like I had babies, they brought in 3. It's fine. Like I didn't have C-sections or anything. So I was pretty much like after a couple of days of rest, like after Clementine, I went back to work after a week. I work from home. So it's not really saying much, but I went back to work after a week, and it's not strenuous. I work online. Not everybody has that luxury, you know, but like it was fine. Like I've had 6 babies in 4 different states, 3 really, but Utah, then other states, then back to Utah. So kind of 4 different states, you know, in the military where I didn't know anybody. Like I'm not saying this because I'm a person who had the people bringing in meals day after day after day after day after day. I'm saying it because it's all voluntary. Like if we pass around a sign-up sheet and say, who would like to contribute to meals to sister so-and-so this week? She just had a baby or she had a surgery or whatever. People can choose to sign up. In fact, usually when we get them around, the first 3 people will sign up, and then we pass it around the rest of the way with the roll and everything else, and everybody looks at it and they go, oh, it's already full, and they pass it on. Like, why not give all those people? Like a lot of people are like, oh, in fact, when I had Clementine, I actually had a friend who called and said, can I bring a meal to you? Is that okay? Even though I didn't get to sign up on the Relief Society thing, I was in primary. I teach a primary class. When you had your baby and they sent that around and I didn't get the sign-up sheet, I would still like to bring you a meal. And I said, of course, thank you so much. I appreciate that. You know, like, it's not the church that is paying for this service. It's not the church that is buying the food and making the meals and bringing it over. I don't know why we have to, like, we would have regular lessons where I would be sitting there and somebody would talk about how there was a woman who was in, you know, in the Relief Society, and she came in and she said, I'm having a surgery. Here is a pass around for you to take to me. I want to have meals every day for 2 weeks because I'm going to be laid out. And they were like, where's your husband? Why isn't he doing it and everything? And where's your son? You have a teenage son. Can't he do this for you and everything? And like, I don't know what the outcome was for that person, or if this was even like some kind of made up bullshit scenario, because that's entirely possible as well. But I don't know what the outcome was for that person or what they ended up doing for her. The consensus, though, like the point of the story was to let everyone in that congregation and in that class know that this isn't acceptable. Do not expect other people to help you. You need, when you are having a surgery, when you are having health problems, when you are having these issues, you need to expect that we'll provide 3 meals, and then you need to figure it out yourself. You know, like, and I have a problem with that too, because yes, I have a husband and he's wonderful. My husband, no problem. He took care of everything. Some women have husbands who just don't. What is she going to do? Is she going to make him do that? What if he won't help take care of her? Then the Relief Society is like, well, he's supposed to, so what? What if she doesn't have a supportive husband? You know, what if, like, and I have teenage kids, and they know how to cook, they have chores, they know how to do laundry, they know how to do these things. And I don't have a problem saying, hey, can you cook dinner tonight? It's your turn to cook dinner. It's fine. That's fine, whatever. But also, like, my teenage kids have jobs. My teenage kids have a lot of homework. My teenage kids are involved with band and sports, and not so many sports, like cross country is what I mean by sports. They're not football people. We're not team sport people as much. Marching band is absolutely a team sport, and they were a big part of that. But they have extracurricular activities, they have classes, they have things that they are also involved in. Why should my kids have to give that up and not, like, miss their work or miss their responsibilities or struggle because my community that is supposed to be my community doesn't want to bring me more than 3 meals, you know, or doesn't want to help me more than a certain allot of time? And then, no, we've done our part. You go and take care of yourself now, you know? Like, I really struggle with that. I just feel like we have enough people who can volunteer, and the church headquarters does not get a say, or they shouldn't get a say, because they're not paying for it. And even if they were, they have $250 billion at least. I think they could foot the bill for some food and it would be just fine, you know? Anyway, so yeah, like as a presidency, I will probably end up, I'm not done. I have a lot to say. Okay. Maybe I will do a second one to post on Monday. Okay. I'm sorry. I'll get through it. As a presidency, we would go every Sunday and sometimes Wednesdays, like sometimes in the middle of the week, to visit several of the women in the ward. And I did enjoy this a lot. I enjoyed the social part of it, although it was extremely time consuming and exhausting. I'm an introvert. So it was exhausting to a large degree, but I did it. I sucked it up and I went, and we had church at 9 during the majority of the time that I was in the Relief Society. We had church at 9, we'd meet up, we'd go home for lunch after church, and then we would meet up again at 12:30. And then often I wouldn't get home until 5 or 6 p.m. We would go visit a woman in the, we went to visit a woman in the ward who was inactive. So, she was on the records, but she was not active in the church. I had never met her. And I've been in this ward for 16 years at the time. I have now been in the ward for 17 years. So it's been another year since I left last year. But she was very, very welcoming, very spunky, really fun. She was kind of like, she was older than me, but not by like a lot. Like maybe in her late 40s, maybe early 50s. She had grown children, but not like my age children, like a little older than my grown children. Does that make sense? So she had pictures of all of her kids on the walls. They were young, you know, like college age, young parent age, all over her walls. We were talking about her kids, and she mentioned her daughter who was in college to be a nurse, and she was saying how she's inactive and that she was sad about it, that she was inactive, and that it was a struggle because she was facing people who judged her or wouldn't date her because she wasn't a Mormon, etc. And that it really bothered her because she was such a great girl and she was so smart, so responsible and kind and everything. And I kind of trying to build a bridge with some common experience. It's one of my neurodivergencies. I do that thing, like I've been taught my whole life that you don't, if somebody's telling you something that happened to them or their experience or whatever, you listen, but you're not really supposed to say anything about it because, like if you tell your experience, then you're making it about you. You're like hijacking the conversation. And I love my group of friends, my book club, my coven. I love them because I expressed this earlier this week when I was sharing a similar experience to something, and they were like, that's ridiculous. Like, I've never heard of that, hijacking a conversation. It's stupid. It's how we relate as humans. And I appreciate that very, very much. I've been told that it's rude, but I've also been told it's a neurodivergence or something like that. Sharing experiences for me is the way that I resist the urge. Like, it's literally like an instinctual kind of repression that I'm doing. I'm repressing an instinct, or I'm repressing this urge to like share also my experience. Oh yeah, like I totally relate to that because I had this experience too. I've been told it's self-centered. And you know, if you've been following me for a while, you know how I feel about being called selfish and self-centered. So I try to avoid that. But this was a situation where I was kind of trying to build a bridge with common experience. And I had said the same kind of thing was going on with my son. Now, my son at the time was a senior in high school, or he might have been a junior. I don't know. He was, remember, Mahone had left when he was 16, so he was probably getting close to 17, so probably close to being a senior. And he isn't active in the church. He's a super wonderful kid. He still is. He's awesome. He's just one of the best people. And I didn't feel like it was fair that, you know, these kids had to feel that weight. And the Relief Society president and the first counselor who were there with me, they just jumped right in and they said that the church is the only place you can find good men. Like right after I tell my experience with my son, and they know my son, they knew my kid, and they knew him, and they knew how responsible he was. And they knew that when he was in the young men's, how he supported and went around and collected the young men and made sure that they all felt loved and safe and included. Anyway, they knew him and they jumped right in and they just said, the ones outside the church just aren't trustworthy. They are worldly and they cheat and they lie, and you just can't find a good man who wasn't Mormon. And I just shut up at that time. I just stayed quiet the rest of the time. And it was really hurtful to me because I didn't know this woman well enough or her daughter at all, but I was certain that she was good. And I was certain that her daughter was good and kind. She was becoming a nurse, and I knew that my son was good and kind. But even this inactive woman was sitting here discussing the level of goodness that could only be found in the church. And I wonder sometimes what her real thoughts were during that conversation, if maybe she didn't feel comfortable to speak up after that point, after what, the Relief Society president and this first counselor said about not being able to find good people, good men outside the church. Her daughter wasn't in the church either. What does that say about her daughter? And I didn't see her again after that talk that we had with her in her home. So I'm at 55 minutes. I have more to talk about, but I'm going to end it here because that's a really long video. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear your, what your experiences are. Have you been in the Relief Society presidency? Have you been in other leadership? What do you think about the way that women and people in the church are allowed to serve? What do you think about self-reliance, and the way that the church welfare system works? I would love to hear your experiences. I'd love to have a conversation. Please feel free to leave a comment, and I'll talk to you later.